Oh, I love it. Every one of them. And this is someone who's just come off of a wedding, a fantastic wedding. Congratulations to you, your family wedding. Uh-oh, I'm getting nervous. Any happy Valentine's Day?
I'll share. This is Anna.
Anna, thanks.
It's a mixed one. So my daughter is born on the 16th of February. Her due date was February 14th. I did not want her to be born on Valentine's Day. But so on Valentine's Day, the year she was going to be born 2 days later, that's when I felt her first like thump, and like really like I thought like it was a big kind of push, and it felt like she was gonna come on Valentine's Day. But it was really special and wonderful, but also like, hold on, wait just a little bit, and don't come out today, come out another couple of days. So, and she did, so yeah.
I love that, Anna. Thanks so much for sharing that. I just can, yes. Thank you. That's a great Valentine memory. Thanks.
Yeah.
I say, I love Barb. Yes. Galentine's, as soon as Galentine's was a thing, or Palentine's. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can share your favorite Galentine or Palentine. Very good. Oh, and Maria likes all of them too. Kieran, romantic at heart. Thanks for dropping it in the chat. Anyone else? Gary, today's webinar. Yay, heart eyes. No pressure, Stan.
Yeah. If talking about burnout is your idea of a Valentine, man, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Well, I love that we're sharing it, and we're thinking happy thoughts about something that sometimes for some people might not be a favorite day. We've talked in the past, and we know that studies show that practicing things like gratitude and reframing negative thoughts to focus on opportunities or elements of joy and learning into situations or scenarios, it's a great tool for positive change, right, in our lives and that of our clients. So our goal, as we've shared before in these webinars, is to connect you and connect with you and other experts in the field to share insights and resources, and invite an open conversation, which is what we hope today will continue to be, on topics that most directly impact your work with Rice students, and also with yourselves as you develop yourself as a coach and a person, and then now with faculty and staff and coaches in training through Coach Rice. So we shared with you over a year ago the U.S. Surgeon General's advisory on protecting youth mental health. We know that that was becoming an issue that was brought to the top of a nation, if not the world's, attention. And in response, we welcomed the folks from Rice Wellbeing and Counseling Center to our Spring 2022 webinar. So today, we're in the wake of reports now of things I'm sure you've heard of, quiet quitting and the Great Resignation. And in October, the U.S. Surgeon General responded again by releasing what they called a new framework for mental health and well-being in the workplace. And the goal of that report is to help develop thriving organizations and healthier communities. So I was thinking for today, I'm really curious, in our work supporting the development of new, emerging, and future leaders in these organizations and communities, what are you seeing in your Rice coaching on this topic or in this area? Like, what themes are you noticing? Again, feel free to drop in the chat or just unmute and share your thoughts.
Well, I see a lot of people that are burning out because basically they cannot organize their time. They time management issues are a lot. People do not prioritize what they need to do or what they should be doing or not doing. They want to join every meeting and try to, be everywhere and forget about the real things that they need to take care of. I think that people can really, helping people to organize themselves and manage their times and their priorities better is a big responsibility that we have.
Yeah, well said, Jorge. I agree. I've been hearing the same. What else? What else are you all hearing? What themes are coming up in this area? Great point, Linda. Do you want to speak to that?
I think so often since we've been doing the Doerr coaching, time management was a thing, Jorge, that oftentimes students would want to bring up, and we were asked not to do that as a goal. But I think it sort of morphs into problem solving or into the stress management. And even with master degree and doctoral students, postdocs, I see that as well. And so I think that oftentimes we just change the topic, we rename things so that it sounds a little bit more palatable, that, you know, it's a stress management thing. It's not a time management thing. Maybe I can face myself better. And then I think it goes a bit with the imposter syndrome that you guys address in synthesis or in Catalyst. I think that's another area that maybe oftentimes we think we can manage everything and we don't want to admit that we can't keep all the balls in the air. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a good.
Yeah, well said. Thanks so much, Linda. Anyone else? What are you noticing? Yeah, Karen?
Yeah, I think related to all that's been said is also the fear of missing out, related to some better decision making about having so many balls in the first place. Everybody comparing each other to themselves to each other, just that whole thing of. And I wish there's a way we could help students bring that down, become a little more human. Let's be a little more reasonable about what you really can do.
Right. Absolutely. I've seen that too, Karen, and kind of a socialization toward that. They've spent so much of their life in ranks and comparison, and now, of course, coming to Rice, you know, the excellence, the level of excellence that they're in here. That's certainly a challenge that can precipitate these issues. Someone else had their hand raised. My windows are moving around a little bit. I think I lost you. Hazar, there you are.
I just wanted to add on what Linda and Karen just said. And this is not only limited to students. I'm sure that you are experiencing with all other coaching assignments and as well as our own life. I see that one of the things is about the options, that we are having so many options available. And this is what the students face as well, that they can do this and do that and do that, whether it is in their social life or their studies or their work. And of course, all those things are possible, but not all of them at the same time. And they need to make choices. And this is what I've seen, that those people are much more effective and successful who are able to make those choices more prudently, more effectively, where they are able to say, okay, these are the things, they are good, but I'm not going to do that. And this is something that we need to really help people with, that when you are making choices, there are things that are really good, but you need to choose not to do them because there are other things which are even better for you, or the impact where you can create even a greater impact. So I think this is, if you are able to do that, we can manage the stress, we can become more effective.
Excellent. So many rich nuggets in there, Azar, that I know that we'll be addressing today. Tracy.
I just wanted to piggyback on that I think that's even tougher for students like the students that we serve, because they're so multi-potentialites, right? Like they actually can do all of those things. And until now, they've probably been able to do everything and haven't had to make choices because they're so capable and they have such great capacity. That's how they got to Rice. So this is like a new, it's harder than it might be for the average bear, I think, for Rice students to do that, because they're incredibly capable, and their interests and abilities both are wide reaching. So I just am super cognizant of that when I'm asking them to make those choices. It's like,
yeah,
this might be the first time ever they've had to do that, even the doctoral students.
Right. Absolutely. I think often we think undergrad, but for sure, and a few people have mentioned that, right? Doctoral students, the MBAs, graduate students, returning. Some of them are professionals coming back. For sure, we see that even in Coach Rice. So thank you all. Wonderful sharing. It's for all these reasons and more that I'm really thrilled to introduce you to our guest speaker today. Dr. Stan Ward. He's the founder and principal of Influence Coaching. He has decades of experience as a writer and educator. He was a professor and administrator in higher ed, and he's a leadership coach. And he works with high performance leaders specifically to reduce stress, manage conflict, and prevent burnout. He really is a master at creating sustainable positive changes. And I'm really excited to bring him here into the conversation with us today. Some of you may also know that he is the director of programs for the Texas Coaches Coalition, which is gearing up for another incredible retreat and conference in New Braunfels, Texas at the end of March. I'm sure he'll share a little bit about that upcoming opportunity with you. And then, as I mentioned, he's a writer. He's also the co-editor of a textbook, Ethical Leadership, a primer. And he's the author of a book, How to Beat Burnout for Yourself, Your Family, and Your Team. He's a frequent presenter for the International Leadership Association, ILA's global conferences, and he shares his expertise and insights often on various podcasts. I just really feel blessed that he is able to be here with us today. Other fun facts about Stan and what we really enjoyed, many of us in the last retreat and conference, was that Stan is a Tai Chi practitioner. He'll get to share that with us. Stay tuned in our fall kickoff. He'll be returning to share some of that with you. And he's also a fountain pen enthusiast, a ukulele player who loves to sing along with his family and friends. He mentioned he has a couple of adult daughters, now young adult daughters. And we'll be happy to share his website with you if you want to learn a little bit more about Stan's work and what he's doing in leadership development. So as we mentioned, this is an interactive event. We want to continue the conversation and absolutely invite you to share your comments and questions early and often in the chat. And we have a couple of folks watching for raised hands as well. So with no further ado, help me welcome Dr. Stan Ward and How to Beat Burnout in 2023 for ourselves and for our students. Stan.
Yeah, thank you, Janine. I appreciate that. And yeah, I would say feel free to interrupt me at any time. We've only got about 30 minutes. We want to make the most of it and be as interactive as possible. So I have a few goals for our time. One, I want to make sure we distinguish burnout from worn out. One of my concerns for where we are now, burnout's been in the popular culture so much that it's become a very fuzzy term. It's kind of a go-to. So let's understand what the literature says about what burnout really is. We're also going to discover 6 areas that make the most difference at work, and this could apply for both you and your students. And then finally, I want to create a little bullet list for you to help you stay on track, as well as think of some things to help your students stay on track. So those are my goals. I do want to take a minute or two. What would make this time beneficial for you? Feel free to either put that on the chat or just shout that out.
Oh, we've got a question. Lisa has a question. What's the difference
versus languishing? Yeah. Great. So that's Adam Grant has come up with that conversation, right? Burnout, worn out, and languishing are 3 things that he's talked about. So yeah, we'll get into that a little bit when we talk about this idea of purpose. So resilience, yep. Resilience, connect burnout and resilience. Thank you, Ruth. Good point. Hopefully we will get into a little bit of that, I think. Well, as things come up, feel free to bring them up. I want to talk about why this matters to me. And this actually does go kind of to the resilience piece. So this is me in 2013. I just had a tube removed from my nose, an NG tube, because I had an abdominal obstruction. And here's the story on that. So I just finished my PhD dissertation in February of 2013. And a week later, I ended up in the ER with this obstruction in my gut, 40-year-old male, perfectly healthy, couldn't really figure out what this was. And that was the beginning of a 2-year journey for me of chronic bacterial overgrowths in my intestines, struggling to eat solid food, a variety of health-related issues. And at the end of that 2 years, I had another really bad flare-up. And as I was talking to my local doctor about it, I was asking, well, could I try diet or what are some other things? And his comment was, Stan, we need to talk about quality of life for you. And that caught my attention because generally quality of life is in opposition to something else, i.e. quantity. Thankfully, at that time, we have some really good friends who were associated with the Mayo Clinic up in Minnesota. And so I spent 2 weeks at Mayo because they were doing some research on my symptoms. And at the end of those 2 weeks, my doctor sat me down and he said, "Mr. Ward, tell me, how are you managing your stress?" I thought, you've got to be kidding me. And without going into a lot of it, there were a number of very significant stressors going on in my life at that time. And what I had managed to do was, although I'd pushed through all of it, I'd achieved everything. My wife was a traumatic brain injury survivor during this time, lost her job, had to go through speech therapy, physical therapy. The woman that hit her car didn't have insurance. My oldest daughter developed a life-threatening anaphylactic reaction. We couldn't figure out what to, so we were in and out of the ER with her. I'm an only child. My mom was having a variety of issues as well, single parent. So, and I was working full time and getting my PhD. So there was a lot going on. And I'd pushed through all of it, but I'd also managed to basically seize up my digestive system in the process. Now, while this isn't burnout, this is an illustration of how powerful stress can be and how important it is for us to learn how to manage it, which then brings us to this issue of what burnout really is. So I want you to think about an automobile engine. When an automobile engine runs out of gasoline, it basically putters, boom, and then it's done. It stops running. And in order to get the engine running again, we simply refuel it, right? Well, you might think of that as being worn out, tired. That's just the physical piece of burnout. Burnout actually is much larger than that and is much more destructive. It's not about just being tired or overloaded. Burnout is the phenomena of that car engine running when it doesn't have enough oil inside it. In other words, that car engine can keep running based on kind of the residual effect of the oil that used to be in there. But as it runs, guess what it's doing? It's damaging itself until eventually the engine seizes up. And so think of burnout really is about when we push ourselves into this state where we do not have the resources to sustain ourselves, and in the process of pushing through, we're actually damaging the system, which physically is what I had done to myself in 2013. We know from the research, there's a thing called the Maslach burnout inventory that measures 3 dimensions of burnout. This goes all the way back to research in the 1980s. The MBI, Maslach burnout inventory, is a standard assessment for this kind of conversation. And it measures 3 things: overload, cynicism, and a lack of accomplishment, right? So overload, that feeling of physical overwhelm. I don't have the resources to get through the day. And when you have that, and it's not unusual to have that periodically, but when we have it day after day after day after day, and we're in that chronic deficit state, that's true overload. And what we know about burnout is that's the #1 predictor. So the longer you're in that state of overload, the more prone you are then to these other things showing up. The second of which is cynicism or depersonalization. You might think of that as disconnect from people or purpose. And of course, purpose is important when we talk about things like resilience and things like that. And then finally, that sense of a lack of accomplishment. So those are the 3 dimensions of burnout. And as those 3 really come together, that's when we have true burnout. Otherwise, it's something else. And so there are 6 areas that actually make the most difference in this. This is from a tool called the Areas of Work-Life Survey. Again, those of you that are interested in doing research in this area or working with your clients in this area, Mindgarden produces a version of the MBI that also comes with the AWS. It's sort of a follow-up to the Maslach burnout inventory. And what I have found in my work, so I've done work with business owners, and I've also done some work with some physicians around this. And so what we'll typically do is we'll do this combined tool where we get the results from the Maslach burnout inventory to figure out where they are relevant to burnout, true burnout. And then with the Areas of Work-Life Survey, we can hone in and figure out which of these areas is really causing them the most overload or overwhelm. What's out of balance? And so I've got to move some boxes around. So So I'm just going to close out the chat. So if somebody says something interesting, Janine, please holler it out to me. Workload, right? That's going to be what we tend to think of with burnout, your ability to manage the work that you're given. Control, though, is another factor here. Think of self-efficacy. We know that self-efficacy is essentially the ability to feel like I am able to impact my world. My decisions have consequences for me. I can control things. So if your workload is out of balance, of course, one of the things you can feel like is you're out of control, right? And that control not only extends to your work life, but it also extends to your home life as well. I think part of what made my situation so hard as I reflect on my story is all this health stuff. There were no knobs I could turn to fix that. It was just a context that I was in that was constantly putting pressure on the system. And with that, I'll give you this image. As you're working with students and working with other clients, be on the listen for this basic concept of, as external pressures exceed internal resources, collapse is inevitable. And I bring that up because that's where that discipline of resilience becomes so important. If you're interested in doing some more study on resilience and you want to find some ways to assess that, there's a helpful tool called the Arsenal, ARSENAL, and it measures 7 factors that we know are directly related to resilience. Another piece that can go with burnout is reward. Is my work being valued? Is it being recognized? For some folks in the workplace, that may be a monetary reward, but not for everyone. There are a lot of folks who simply want recognition, right? That shout out, that public shout out of what they're doing, what they're accomplishing, what they're contributing. Community is another piece. Excuse me, I got a little something in my throat here. So just this morning, I had a call with a new client, as a COO, and he's in a really stressful place right now. And so one of the things I asked him about was, what's your support system like? He's got none, right? Part of his story is both he's on his own kind of family-wise as well as work-wise right now. And so that has this compounding factor that makes the stress even harder on him. Fairness and values are going to kind of go together, right? We want a sense of justice. And then on the values piece, to the extent that you're taking action that's meaningful to you, or to the extent that your work supports things that are of a higher order, higher level or value, that's going to help you beat burnout. One illustration that comes to mind is a young woman I was working with, very successful in her organization, but I could tell she was becoming increasingly disconnected. And as we kind of began to touch base on that, her struggle was basically this organization, kind of corporate structure. It was all about making money. That really wasn't a success metric for her. She was much more interested in the relationship piece, and eventually actually decided to make a career change because of that. So as you think about your students, think about their workload, think about what they have control over, think about what's being rewarded in their lives, think about how they do or don't have community, which is especially tricky with how social media works. Think about where there is fairness or a lack of fairness in their lives, and then think about what it is they value. And I want to hit pause here and say, what insights are coming to mind for you as you think about these 6 areas and how they impact your students?
Had a couple of great notes here, and if they want to come off mute and share their thoughts. Erica, love your thought about the relationship of students being overwhelmed with workload and time related to their community support. Do you want to speak to that? Or any other comments on that?
I think what I see mostly is workload for sure. I do a lot of MBA and students where they study and they work full time, so they are clearly overloaded, and they find it very difficult to manage everything. And I think also because I do have a lot of students that are international and they don't have a support system in place, and that makes a challenge for them as well when they need to share stuff and get some advice and support. They find it very difficult sometimes.
Yeah, you can see as far as awareness raising, the slide originally was from a presentation where I had people rate themselves. We're not doing that necessarily for the sake of time, but I think you can bring some of these awareness raising questions. And to that point, excuse me, again, on the support piece, one of the ironies here is what we know about resilience, managing stress is sleep, nutrition, and exercise are fundamental. And when you're in overload, those are the first things to go. And so I would encourage you, as you're working with students that are in these kinds of spaces that you're describing, and especially as you think about these students, maybe they are graduate students and they're working while trying to work a day job or working their day job and also going to school. Help them think about what can they do to be intentional, just to turn the dial a little bit regarding those basic things of sleep, nutrition, and exercise. Just like it's not selfish for your car to turn that red light on and say, change the oil every 3,000 to 6,000 miles. It is not selfish for that graduate student to maintain themselves. Why? Well, just like a car has a lot that's depending on it, there's a lot that's depending on that graduate student. And so that self-maintenance really is important. And that's one of the things I had to struggle with in my own journey, is to recognize that self-care wasn't selfish. And for me, it helped me to motivate that by realizing there are other relationships that are dependent on my effective functioning. And so I've got to do a certain measure of this stuff.
Stan, that makes me wonder about its relationship to Karen's comment about clarity about what their values are driving their decision making. It seems like there may be an opportunity for exploring values around what you said, it impacts your relationships. What are the impacts of the choices relative to their values?
Yeah, actually, I had an interesting conversation with a college president actually on related to this. So he was reflecting on, he had gone for like this 2-week beach vacation and came back from that just as tired as he was when we left. That physical rest did nothing for him. Yet he reflected on, when he got back, he picked up a pet project that was one of just his passion projects for the university. He said that was better for him than a 2-week vacation. Mm-hmm. Why? Because he tapped into meaningful work. He tapped into values, and that became a source of energy for him to actually help him recuperate.
Lisa's asking, where does connectivity and belonging and sense of community sit here?
Yeah. Wow. Well, we know that community support is important. I can't necessarily give you a piece of research on this. I am going to give you a piece of just something I've learned about myself. I'm like off the chart nerd, think a lot of thinky thoughts, and that's why this is bald. There's just so much heat coming off this thing. I have discovered, though, that if I just try to think my way out of my stresses, I usually make it worse. It's by connecting with other people and sharing life experiences that I actually get relief from all that tension that's building up in my body. And I find that to be true a lot of the other guys that I've worked with. Anything else? And I do see a question about some of the tools. I'll be happy to dig back and find some links for those.
So I do have a question, if I may. When you talk about, the basics, right? The sleep, nutrition, and exercise, I think there's, for the high achievers that I think most of Doerr students are, how to, I'll say, manage or set expectations of what they think they should be doing or how they think they can, I'm going to say, manage their focus, because they're like, how many activities can I get involved in? How can I manage my workload and everything else? So in a sense, giving them or letting them find their sense of comfort, I will say, on, where do they want to put their focus? And when you're working with people, what's your recommendation as, you're doing your PhD and having your knowledge here?
Yeah, well, and yeah, part of this is normal people don't get a PhD. So I totally get the what you're describing, that personality type. So I grew up in the 70s and 80s. You may remember Big League Chew. It's this gum. It's got a big baseball player on it, right? So I call that guy Big League Jimmy. And Big League Jimmy is one of my teammates up in my head. I describe myself as the kind of person, I'm like a pole vaulter, and I get up to the bar and I go, oh, well, if I can get over this, it must not be hard enough. So I'm going to raise the bar while I'm in midair. And I suspect a lot of your students have a similar personality, right? And of course, what that means is it's a bottomless pit. There's never enough. And so there's a couple of things there. One, I think helping students tune into what their body is telling them can be helpful. I had a really, really busy last week, a lot of great opportunities and stuff I wanted to do and felt incredibly accomplished. I also was in a rough spot physically. I was starting to have a lot of gut pain again. Well, for me, I got to pay attention to that stuff. So that physical awareness, helping students tune into what's happening in their body. That's actually why I do the Tai Chi stuff as well, so that I can be aware of when I'm starting to carry tension in my body. And to help students recognize if you're carrying a lot of tension, that's your body telling you something, that it needs some attention, and it probably means you need to slow down on something. Let's see here. Regarding all these changes that we've talked about and ways to help students. So this is a very simple change model I use with my clients. I give them this leather bookmark. And it basically says, here's how we can create sustainable change. We run small experiments. So again, for those overachiever students who they've got a plan to change the world, don't worry about the world. That you'll get there. Right now, focus on something small that you can take action on, right? For the graduate student who's doing all this stuff, it can be as simple as saying, how much water are you drinking? Are you staying hydrated, right? It could be as simple as saying, hey, you got a little smartwatch thing. When it tells you to stand, are you moving? So funny, mine's doing that right now. I've been sitting here too long. These very little small experiments you can try. You always want to celebrate any successes. If anything actually works, that's awesome. Celebrate it. Give yourself that dopamine hit, right? Those feel-good chemicals in the brain. Those metabolize very quickly. The stress hormones don't. And then apply what you learn. One of the things that we tend to see with high achievers is they're often evaluating success versus failure, right? And they do have these unrealistic expectations of what success looks like. So this thing I came back from this weekend, I was frustrated because I felt like I hadn't made I hadn't made enough progress with this conversation with the CEO. Like that was my standard for success. At a corporate presentation, like there's all these people there, all these wonderful conversations, and what am I fixated on, right? Success metrics are a little wonky. It wasn't so much give this great presentation, help people learn, make these great relationships. It was that happened. The self-criticism, that judge voice was going around in my head because I had some crazy standard of making this incredible impact on this one individual. it really wasn't even part of the gig. When we can think about learning rather than success or failure, what am I learning? It gets us out of that feeling ineffective, right? It reactivates, again, that front part of the brain that's not so much the limbic system, fight, flight, or freeze, right? So what I would also encourage you to do is constantly be asking your students, what are you learning? Not so much in class, but in life. As you're doing these things, as you have these setbacks or even these successes, what are you learning about yourself? Because I think that also helps them tune into where they can apply themselves, what they want to focus on, and where they want to do other things. Again, just reflecting on my own experience this weekend, realizing, you know what, although it would be cool to be a speaker guy who's traveling the country, my body doesn't tolerate that well. I've learned that about myself. I have to listen to that. Okay, so I do want to take just a few more minutes here. I'd be curious to hear at this point of the conversation, what's sticking with you? What are the takeaways?
I'm just going to say like so much. I mean, I love the scales that you've shared, the things that the tools that we can use with our clients, the 6 different pieces of what influences burnout, and loved what you said. That I love that little leather thing that you give your clients, like just that simple thing that people can look at day over day over day and be reminded of what they need to do. So much great stuff. Thank you.
Thanks for that feedback, Anna.
What I like, Stan, is that these 6 areas that you told us about how to investigate with our clients, because usually we talk about workload all the time, right? And there is much more than that. It's a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah. Again, the external pressure is what we tend to focus on. Sometimes we're not tapping into wondering what's going on with those internal resources.
I would like to highlight 2 things. One is the example that you gave about the oil change. That is so powerful. It's so simple, but this is what all of us forget, and we need to remind not only ourselves but the people that we coach, that do not see this, do not feel guilty about that. Unless you pay attention to yourself, you will not be able to deliver all the great things that you want to. And the other thing which is connected with that is to create change, run small experiments. And when you achieve something, celebrate. And whatever you learn, apply that. Many times we spend too much time in just learning and do not applying. And then we don't achieve much. So I think these are very good reminders. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so what I would encourage you is to take some time to think about what could be some action items, right? Speaking of learning and applying, what a great setup, what brilliant segue, right? So just take a moment. How can you apply this for yourself? Just reflect on that a bit. And if you've got any insights you feel comfortable sharing, we'd love to see them in the chat, how you can apply it for yourself, or maybe even help your students apply this.
Well, I think it's straightforward, asking this question more often. What have you learned? And how you plan to use it?
So in my coaching conversations, I start every coaching call with 1, what successes can we celebrate? And then 2, what did you learn? I don't even get to the coaching contract part until we first celebrate success and talk about what they're learning.
So I actually have a question.
Mhm.
One of my takeaways is that focusing on learning rather than success is crucial for well-being. And on the other hand, I'm curious to know, what do you tell clients who are high achievers and say, yeah, learning's all good, and I need and I want to deliver high quality results?
Yeah. And so I would investigate that. I mean, one, I think you can get curious and say, well, what makes you think that learning and high quality results are in opposition to each other? Because it sounds like in that question, you can have one or the other. Yeah, and I really do get what you're saying. It's been interesting in my journey. I used to get more pushback on that than I do now. And I don't know if it's because socially we're at a place where maybe with all this conversation around growth mindset and all this stuff, people are more open to the idea of learning or beginning to see the value of it. I don't know if maybe it's the age of the folks I'm working with, but I don't get as much pushback on that as I used to. Now you've got me curious. I got to go reflect on that a while.
Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, we couldn't have our coaching arc without having some commitments, right? And so I asked for yourself, take a moment, reflect on this, and make a commitment for yourself of how you can apply this for yourself. Because again, coach, a lot depends on you, just like a lot depends on the car. Just like you need your clients, or you want your clients to take care of themselves, coach, you've got to do it for yourself. And I can promise you, I've been coaching since 2011. And I think about what my coaching looked like before I went through all this stuff versus what it looks like afterwards. I'm a whole lot more effective with people, having gone through the journey I've gone through and learned the things I have, to where I appreciate self-care because I know it by experience versus just going, oh yeah, self-care is important. And while you're doing that, I'll just reference, speaking of self-care, yeah, I am involved, a volunteer with the Texas Coaches Coalition. We are hosting a all Texas retreat and conference for coaches toward the end of March. See my good friend Tracy there. She's was with us last year. She'll be with us again this year. Would encourage you to look up texascoachescoalition.org. You can learn more about the retreat there. And with that, I'll turn, let's see. Yeah, you can also download a PDF on the formula for beating burnout. I believe you're also I think you also got a copy of this with your invite today. And that's a model I use about boosters versus drainers in time. Didn't have a chance to get into all that today. That's a whole different deal. But it should be fairly self-explanatory.
We'll just have to have you back, Stan.
Yeah, sounds fun. Sounds fun. A lot to cover in 30 minutes.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And we're really excited to invite you back for our fall kickoffs, and we can explore some Tai Chi and some taking care of ourselves together. Super excited to have had you here today. Thank you so many great takeaways. Donica's going to go ahead and share our slides. We've got a few announcements to share with you before we say farewell for the day. One of our questions, our opening is, how might these insights impact how you coach a RICE student? And so if you haven't already, maybe jot some ideas down for yourself and or in the chat. I heard having the conversation, continuing the conversation, making sure that we're maybe asking about our physical bodies and how this experience is showing up for our students physically. So again, just take a moment to jot those down, and then we'll go ahead and move on to announcements. Important dates just to kick it off. Go ahead. There we go. Got a lot of things going on at the Doerr Institute. These are just the top of mind in the next couple of weeks and into April. You'll see that synthesis. We have several synthesis coaches on the call today. Yay. I'm really excited about synthesis starting off. A new element of that will be a student orientation for all registered students, which we'll be hosting tomorrow night and Thursday before we launch our very first sessions next week. Coach Rice also starts this week for professionals. Module 1 of 4 is also happening this week, as well as a kickoff of a Catalyst module launching a team. A lot going on this week. And then next, as like I mentioned, synthesis will begin. And then we're already into activation midterm. So for those of you that are new, you'll be meeting with me midterm. And for those of you that want to have a conversation midterm, you're also welcome to, let's find some time on the calendar to chat. Spring break is the middle of March, and we're all taking a break. Stephanie and I will both be taking a little hiatus for that week, and then we'll be right back to support you all the following week. The second module of Coach Rice will be that first week of April, and then we'll be moving into the end of April, which is the end of our semester. The 21st is both the last day of activation coaching and our end of year celebration, and we'll send some details your way. Just hold that date for us. If you'd like to come celebrate the end of the semester with us. Spring invoices are due, just wanted to point that out again, April 26th. And then, drum roll please, we have a date for our fall kickoff. So mark your calendars. We're going to have some fun again, coming back to Houston on September 7th. That's the Thursday after Labor Day. So we'll be back here on the 7th for some more fun and connection and some Tai Chi. I've been working on my ball, Stan. Next, we have a couple of more announcements. Some are familiar, but just want to point out again that we have a Coach Connection Hour every Thursday. It's been really fun to connect with those that can make it from 9 to 10. Anybody want to speak to that? I'll give you a second. You want to share with the other coaches how much fun we have? Holly?
I'll speak. I really appreciate you opening it up. Whatever the size, I think it is just kind of a smaller group of people, familiar coaches and faces to spend a little time with. So thank you for setting that up.
Absolutely. We've had such great conversations and connections, and the neatest things come up, maybe not planned. And there's always some great takeaways. So look forward to seeing you all on our Thursday morning Coach Connection. And then here's a new opportunity. We would like to open our quarterly webinar opportunity open to you. We know we have tremendous expertise and experience in the coaching field, and in particular in higher ed. If you have something that you would like to share with the coach community, please apply to be our guest speaker. Your first opportunity to share with the group is going to be April. So we have gone from monthly to quarterly. You've probably noticed. This is February. Our next one is April. And if you'd like to see your name in lights, or at least on a slide, then go ahead and fill out that application. We'd love to see you here. Finally, again, just another note, save the date, Thursday, September 7th. We hope to see you all there. And then just a couple of notes about program. Go ahead and advance that. We'll do a couple, thanks. Program expectations, just a reminder for Coach Rice folks who are getting started. Some couple notes about your PO. This is going to be on your page. We just wanted to pull it to your attention. So lead facilitators and co-facilitators and observers, you're going to invoice under your Coach Rice PO. Mentor coaches, there are many roles and many ways to support Coach Rice. Mentor coaches, there's your note about invoicing. And then we also have one-on-one coaching embedded in the program now. For all of us, we have a lot of questions coming up on the end of semester survey. One of those is, what are the programs you'd like to support? So if Coach Rice is one of them, you're PCC certified, and for the observers, you have PCC marker training. You have until March to complete that with some remuneration from Doerr. So I encourage you to look into doing that. And then finally, I know we're right at time coming up here, we want to thank you and invite your feedback. This link, this QR code actually links you instead of an end of event survey. We wanted to share with you, it's been in the Calm Blast a few times. This is a link that you can use 24/7 anytime you have a thought that you want to share with us. So we're going to do it a run of it for your feedback on this webinar, or if you've had other thoughts as we've been together or through the week that you want to share with us. When you open that, it'll ask you what you'd like to give us feedback on. There's a whole list. We do not yet have webinar on there, so you'll want to choose other and then write in webinar, and then just anything you'd like to share with us. There was a question, I think, on our last call about where to share themes that are popping up for you with your or coming up with your students. That's a great place to share that. So write other and themes, and then please do share with us any patterns or themes or things that you're seeing, so that we can be sure to be responsive to that, either in these webinars or with other training or support that we offer you and students. So I think with that, our last task of the day is to get a photo that our marketing expert Jessica can share on social media. So if you'd like to join in the photo, go ahead and turn your camera on. And if you're feeling a little camera shy, that's perfectly okay too. Go ahead and take this moment to turn off your camera, take off your glasses or leave them on, fix your hair. Ready? Gary is going to do, good job, Nick. You got the moves. All right, all
Alrighty.
adjusted. Here we go, Gary. Give us our
I'll give you all a countdown. We've got 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Thank you guys. Awesome.
Are we 2 pages?
Yep, we're all set.
All right.
I got us all on 1 page.
Yay, Gary. Awesome, Gary. And thank you, Donica. She's been our tech support today. And Stephanie, love you. Love partnering with you. And Stan, thank you so much for a fantastic webinar. We look forward to seeing you again in the fall. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.